Fox 5 will have round-the-clock team coverage with live reports as they break. For the most complete continuing coverage of the attack on America, stay tuned to Fox 5 News. Now from Fox 5 News, continuing coverage of attack on America.
New York, a skyline blown apart. Washington, the Pentagon invaded. Our most powerful cities under siege. Countless casualties, untold devastation. Tonight, the attack on America. Hello, everyone. I'm Tracy Neal along with Mike Landis, and we are continuing our coverage of this unprecedented day in American history.
It all began so many hours ago, and we've been following every step of it, each and every step that's taken place today. The one that we're watching right now, the situation at the Pentagon, where Bob Barnard is standing by. They're still trying to get that fire put out, right, Bob?
It's still a smoky fire right now, Mike and Tracy. You can see, I don't know if you can see with the night sky, but there is a lot of smoke still going skyward, blowing south, and officials, Arlington County fire officials primarily leading the firefighting force here, they are still putting water on this fire some 13, 14 hours later. And I think you can see there's a bit of an orange glow there, so we believe there are still flames that they are battling, but it's a thick, smoky fire, and they will not be able to send in the Arlington, the Fairfax and Montgomery County urban search and rescue teams into the crater area there to look for possible survivors and begin the recovery of some of the casualties, a number which Fox News is reporting could reach 100 fatalities inside this building, apart from the number of people who are on the American Airlines jet. A couple of points I want to make, though. One thing that Secretary of Defense Don Rumsfeld said earlier was that the fire that we saw burning in Afghanistan overnight, their time, he said the United States had nothing to do with that. And I don't think that's a point we've made in the past hour, that people thought that perhaps was an early retaliation by the United States. But he's a man who should know, head of all our military forces, and he said that, in fact, the U.S. government had nothing to do with the attack in Afghanistan overnight. The second point was something that Attorney General John Ashcroft said earlier tonight, and that was that in one of the hijacking cases, the hijacker had a knife. And a lot of people have been wondering, how could a hijacker or hijackers commandeer a large commercial aircraft with a number of crew? We don't know how it happened in all four cases, but in one of the cases, Attorney General Ashcroft said that the hijacker had a knife, and that's what he used to overwhelm the cockpit crew and commandeer the aircraft. So that's the latest from here. Firefighting still continuing, and hopefully, before this night is out, the first major urban search and rescue teams to get inside and look for possible survivors.
Thanks for that information, Bob.
We are going to go now to Fox 5's Bill Prasad, who is at the Virginia Hospital Center in Arlington, where some of the victims from that crash at the Pentagon today were taken for treatment. Bill.
As Bob Barnard just told us, some firefighters still on the scene at the Pentagon. Some of them are trickling into the Virginia Hospital Center here in Arlington, where they are being treated. A total of 43 people so far today have been brought in. 22 are still hospitalized at this hour. Of those 22, 9 are in serious condition. Of the 43 treated, 7 are EMS workers, the men and women who put their lives on the line to rescue others. This man was just admitted a short time ago. He, along with several others, have suffered from smoke inhalation. Doctors here expect to see more like him throughout the night. This hospital is no longer in crisis mode, but it stands ready.
At this time, we are still fully staffed. We are not on full crisis alert. We're just on step down, but we still have a number of those 100 nurses and 50 physicians that came in today here just prepared for whatever may come. And I think at this point, we've been told that a number of the EMS staff that we could expect to see this evening.
So far at this hospital, no fatalities. Now, in reference to giving blood, some people have shown up here and have offered to give blood. That is not a good idea. You should not come to this hospital. What you should do is call the local Red Cross Center or your closest hospital and schedule an opportunity to come in, because blood will be needed. We are live in Arlington. Bill Prasad, Fox 5 News.
All right, thanks very much, Bill.
Bill makes a good point. A lot of people want to know what they can do. They look at the situation and say, I want to help, I just don't know how. Laura Evans has been out today and has met a number of people who were there and were able to help today. Laura, give us the latest on where you're at.
Well, we are obviously outside of the Pentagon. We are told that there are as many as 10,000 emergency workers down there, one of whom I spoke about earlier. His name is Stephen. He was a construction worker who was working just a short couple of miles away from the Pentagon. He came down here with his heavy equipment, brought other construction workers. They have been lending a helping hand. There are many volunteers here, many emergency personnel, and of course the world-renowned Fairfax Urban Search and Rescue, along with other search and rescue teams who say they cannot go in until the flames are out and until that building is secure. There is still some concern that the building could collapse even further. I do want to tell you a little bit about what happened earlier. A few dozen of us, reporters and photographers, were taken into the Pentagon on the other side where the briefing room is to listen to Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld, General Hugh Shelton, Senators Carl Levin and John Warner. They talked about what a tragedy this is, what a tragic day in America, but they say that the government is still functioning despite the tragedy and that tomorrow the Pentagon will be open for business. Of course, the emergency rescue will continue here as well. They said they've taken calls of sympathy from across the globe, and they are calling on the world to step in and help. General Shelton called this a barbaric act of terrorism done by fanatics, and he said in a poignant moment, make no mistake about it, your armed forces are ready. I did ask Secretary Rumsfeld about the firefighting and search and rescue efforts. He said that the fire was contained and controlled. However, we are still able to see flames shoot up at some points here now more than 12 hours after the attack here. He said the FBI will be there tomorrow and for the days to come and possibly weeks to come as search and rescue does go in. I was told earlier by Stephen, the construction worker with whom I spoke, that a couple of search and rescue workers were able to go in. The FBI has taken a couple of pictures, but they can't go in very deep again because they're concerned about the collapse. Also, I'm told the fuselage from the airplane is still below the debris right now. Do want to give you a few phone numbers for loved ones to call with questions. These are only phone numbers for loved ones to call if you are concerned about possible victims inside. I am told that a few of them have been identified. The Army contact number is 800-984-8523. The Navy and the Marine Corps number to call, 877-663-6772. The Air Force, 800-253-9276. Again, Secretary Rumsfeld saying the government is still functioning despite this horrible tragedy, and tomorrow the government will be functioning. Pentagon open for business. Back to you in the studio.
All right, Laura, thank you very much.
The explosions today in New York City and in D.C. have forever changed us here in this country, but the explosion in New York has forever changed the landscape, the skyline of New York. That is a live picture. You are looking at what remains of the Manhattan skyline tonight in New York City. If you know anything about that city, and you probably do, it is very different tonight than it has ever been.
Thousands of power outages, of course, with all of the explosions that took place. Look at this video that we're going to share with you now and just let you follow the gentleman that shot this. This is after the tower starts to fall down. He is a doctor, apparently, and he is running away from this cloud of debris that's coming his way. Listen to this and just absorb for a moment what this had to be like.
I hope I live. It's coming down on me. Here it comes. I'm getting behind a car. It's incredible. Okay, I'm gonna have to go find people who need help, because I don't think I'm one of them. You okay, sir? Okay. Can I just get a toot off your respirator? Can I get a toot? I'm just getting a couple of clean breaths. That's good. Okay, back to you. This is the car I hid behind. It saved my life. Oh, wait, maybe it was this one. There's all these noises. I don't know what it is. They say someone needs help.
Yeah, Mike! Mike! Mike, come over here! Yeah!
Anybody need a doctor?
Where are you?
Don't have oxygen.
Hello, Doc.
Hey, that guy needs some oxygen if someone can share it with him.
10-4.
Thanks.
With as murky as that video looks, it looks like it could almost have been shot underwater. And I'm sure that's what it must have felt like to the people who were trying to draw a breath there. So much dirt and dust in the air from that. And this is the skyline of New York tonight. Very, very dark. A lot of power outages there as well. The Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building, no lights on tonight.
I have in my hands right now a partial list of some of the casualties. It's a combination of various flights and also from some at the sites. We'll give you a couple of names here. One former Caps player, Garnet Ace Bailey, 53, now living in Linfield, Massachusetts. He was the director of pro scouting for the LA Kings, as well as Mark Bavis, a scout for the LA Kings.
Why don't you go ahead and just pick those up, Tracy? I'm afraid I don't have my
a few others. American Airlines on board Flight 77 from Washington to Los Angeles. You know this already probably. Barbara Olson, 45, TV commentator and lawyer here in the city, and also a Republican activist, as well as Karen A. Kincaid, a Washington, D.C. lawyer. Moving on to American Airlines Flight 11 from Boston to Los Angeles. Among the passengers on board, David Angel, 53, of Pasadena, California. He was the executive producer of NBC's hit show Frasier. He was traveling with his wife, Lynn, also from Pasadena, California. The list is longer than that. Those are a few of the notable names, a few of the local folks whose names pop out at me. Right. There are several, it looks like heads of and founders of companies. Right. There is just, and this is just a partial list.
In the case of Barbara Olson, we were hearing the story from Brian Bolter was sharing with us earlier. Apparently, Barbara Olson had a chance to leave and go to Los Angeles yesterday. Decided to stay an extra day so she could spend time with her husband, who of course is with the Bush administration, and ended up leaving today. We understand she also made some phone calls from the aircraft talking about the fact that it had been hijacked.
That's right. Another name for you, Peter Gay, a 54-year-old from Massachusetts, vice president and general manager of Raytheon Company. Let's see, Charles Jones, also of Massachusetts. It's a wide variety of people, either from the Boston area, from L.A., it looks like, a few from D.C. A few of the pilots on the various planes are now listed, as well as the crew members.
Okay, we had talked a lot about the situation of faith in a situation, the series of incidences like we've had today, where people are cleaving to their faith with something that is so hard to understand and to embrace in any way, shape, or form, just to get your head around. It's just so unbelievable. And Cardinal McCarrick spoke today, encouraging people to seek solace and comfort in their faith.
Of course, sure, for sure.
Thank you so much. Okay. So tell me about, I guess, did you speak with some of the patients?
No, I didn't. I think most of them were in the burn units, and you know that they're very careful about making sure that that nobody comes in and disturbs that. we've been praying for them. I guess they know we've been praying for them. So I went in to give blood, basically. So that was the reason for my journey here. If they're still there in a few days, I will come back and have a chance to visit with them. I'm not sure they need visitors right now. They just need a little quiet. And the shock and the trauma that they've gone through, besides the physical pain, must be very tough.
Your impressions of when you first heard something was happening?
I think it took me back to the Kennedy assassination when I was here in Washington. I was Dean of Students at Catholic University, and that's the first thing you thought of. I remembered that. You know what a terrible shock that was, and it took you a while to appreciate that there was actually something, that this was real, that they could do something, that someone could do something like this. The same thing happened this morning when I had they called me and I put the television on. And I could see this awful thing happening. I saw the World Trade Center going up, and to see it crumble, and to have the terrible concern about thousands of people who may have been in there, and the loss of life, and the families, this awful wound to the psyche of America at this time. So immediately we organized a mass at the National Shrine, which is close to where I live. And the bishops of the United States, the administrative committee, which is the ones who guide the bishops' conference, were meeting at the conference center, which is near there. So I called them, and I told them and invited them. So we had about 40 bishops at the mass, and with 3,000 youngsters. It was great because everybody could get together. The young people and the bishops, the shepherds and their people. It was good. I think for the young people it was wonderful. For the bishops it was wonderful because they had a chance to pray with all these young people who came to offer themselves, as intercessors, that this moment pass and that we get back on track to being the kind of nation we need to be.
How do we begin to heal?
That was Cardinal Theodore McCarrick. Of course, across this country, throughout this day, prayers have been sent up for our country and, of course, for the victims and their families.
We're going to go now to Fox 5's Paul Wagner, who continues our coverage now from D.C. Metro Police Headquarters. Paul.
Mike and Tracy, we received an update earlier tonight from the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety, Margaret Kellums, and D.C. Police Chief Charles Ramsey, telling us that D.C. public schools will be closed tomorrow. The D.C. government will be open, but there will be liberal leave. And let me tell you a little bit about some of the buildings down here. D.C. Police headquarters here behind me is closed, and DMV is in the basement of this building, so DMV will not be open tomorrow. Again, DMV will be closed tomorrow. One Judiciary Square, which is just over here where the mayor's office is, that building will be open. You will be able to come down here. There is some questions still about D.C. Superior Court. Initially, Margaret Kellums again telling us that she believed the court, at least a portion of the court, would be open. As far as a full court schedule, that's still in question at this point. D.C. police have canceled all leave for their officers. They are now working 12-hour shifts. They are working under an emergency status. And Margaret Kellums now walking up to us right now. Deputy Mayor for Public Safety. Margaret, you told us a little while ago that there was an urgent need for blood. Tell us a little bit more about that.
We're encouraging everyone to get out and donate blood. Tomorrow the government is open but operating on liberal leave. So any individuals who can take the time, we really encourage you to do it. We need to be supportive of the folks in Northern Virginia and the folks in New York who have suffered this catastrophic tragedy.
You've stayed on top of how the fire department and D.C. police and the National Guard have reacted today. Tell us how they're prepared right now and what kind of responses there have been through the day and will be tonight.
We are right now still in a state of alert. We have all of our police officers activated, working on 12-hour shifts. We have all of our firefighters and emergency medical services personnel. We also have support from outside jurisdictions. All of the agencies mobilized very quickly this morning. We have contingency plans and we have emergency plans in place to deal certainly not with something like this. This isn't what we were preparing for, but in fact we did have the plans. We put them into place and things went very smoothly and very quickly this morning.
People will see the National Guard out on the streets if they are out tonight and out tomorrow morning. Tell us how they're being utilized.
Their primary role today, earlier today, was helping with traffic management and providing some support out in the streets to the MPD officers. We will continue to use them in that capacity as long as is necessary, but we will revisit that issue as the day progresses.
I was bringing our viewers up to date as far as what's closed down here. One judiciary will be open, DMV will be closed. There was some question about the court, D.C. Superior Court. Do you have any update on that?
I haven't confirmed that yet. My understanding is that at a minimum, arraignment court will be operating tomorrow. I think it's very possible that Superior Court trials, however, will not be. Given their location, given some of the other concerns that we have, we think that's understandable. But I will speak with the Chief Judge and confirm that. Everyone, again, should check the media outlets tomorrow morning to look at street closures, to look at any changes of circumstance that have happened during the night.
And as far as D.C. government will be open, but under liberal leave?
Yes, that's correct. D.C. government will be open on liberal leave. D.C. public schools will be closed. And the DMV headquarters here at 301 C Street, which is in the basement of the police department, will also be closed.
Now, I know you've been working on IMF World Bank preparations. The chief came out a little while ago and said that they're recommending that those meetings be called off. Tell us a little bit about that.
The chief is obviously appropriately concerned about the events of today, and his recommendation is that we ask the IMF World Bank to not host the meetings. This is a federal event, and we will work in close consultation with the federal government to make that decision. But we were originally planning for several thousand officers to be managing a group of protesters and a group of dignitaries. We were not thinking about potential threats of the nature that we've seen today.
Have you had any response from the IMF or the World Bank at this point?
I'm not aware of any so far, but again, their coordination is really with the federal government more than with us. We will, in the upcoming days, work closely with the federal government to make that decision.
Deputy Mayor for Public Safety, Margaret Kellums, thank you very much. And let me also tell you that D.C. Police Chief Charles Ramsey is telling you tonight, if you see anything suspicious, to call 911. Anything that's suspicious at all, be vigilant in the city. Of course, no one really knows overnight whether or not anything's going to happen or anything will happen tomorrow. So he's just keep an eye out, watch for suspicious activity. Mike and Tracy, that's the latest from down here at Police Headquarters.
Hey, Paul, I want to let you know that according to the Associated Press, D.C. Court of Appeals and D.C. Superior Court will be open tomorrow with liberal leave. That is what the Associated Press is reporting to us right now.
Okay.
All right. Paul, thanks very much. One thing we want to share with you, all of the focus right now, of course, is on New York. All of the focus is on the Pentagon. Those are the areas where everyone is watching what's going on. What's interesting is we've sort of forgotten about the fact that the terrorist attacks involved 4 jetliners that were all headed for California. And what's going on out there? It's nearly a standstill out there, we are told, closing government building, offices, airports, even Disneyland, with the Navy on high alert, restricting access to 8 of its bases along California's coast, and even one in Fallon, Nevada.
Let me give you a few other names that are on this passenger list. They are releasing now the names of the pilots and some of the flight attendants. The pilots on American Airlines Flight 11, headed from Boston to Los Angeles, John Ognowski, 52, Tom McGinnis of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Sarah Lowe was one of the flight attendants on that flight. Let's see, the one from Boston to Los Angeles, United Airlines Flight 175. The pilot, Victor Saransi from Pennsylvania. Al Marchard, one of the flight attendants. And they're beginning to develop quite a list of passengers on board that flight, including Brian Sweeney, Mark Bavis, Peter Hansen, and his wife Susan Hansen, and it looks like perhaps another family member, Kristen Hansen.
Another of our Fox 5 team members has been following all of these stories very closely and brings us some new information now. Is Brian Bolter in our newsroom. Brian?
Yeah, Mike, Tracy, we are just getting word now that the Associated Press is reporting that cell phone calls are coming out of the rubble of the World Trade Center. Some of those possibly to loved ones. We've heard at least one account of a cell phone call to a loved one trying to give directions to reach them inside the rubble. They are alive, and they are waiting desperately for rescue personnel to attack the building and try and get in and actually find survivors. So the Associated Press reporting that there are survivors that are actually on their cell phones right now inside the World Trade Center rubble, making an effort to get authorities to them to get them out alive. I want to show you, as we shift our focus to New York for just a few minutes, the special edition of the Washington Times here, extra horror. You can see World Trade Center. That is the plane crashing into the World Trade Center we've seen video of so often. A few more images here on the back. More of the fireball, the collapse of the World Trade Center. People running right here. People running away as the building is collapsing. Really searing images that will sear into the American psyche for a long time to come. Here's the Washington Post special late edition. Also, one World Trade Center tower on fire, another one about to be destroyed. Special edition of the Washington Post. You know, keeping our focus on the New York, Washington World Trade Center situation. Shortly after the first explosion, the Associated Press reporting that an elevator opened on the very first floor of the World Trade Center. A man was engulfed in flames, a horrific sight. Bystanders reached in, put the fire out, threw him on the ground, rolled him over, and pulled him outside, tried to bring him to safety. Just one of the many searing images that we're showing you tonight. Here's a few others as we take a look at what's transpired up in New York City over the last 12, 14, 15 hours.
I hope I live. It's coming down on me.
Searing images coming out of New York City today. You know, there are reports, and we've seen graphic video of it as well, people jumping from the World Trade Center as high as the 80th floor. In fact, two people were seen holding hands as they jumped out of the window. Again, we want to express to you that the Associated Press is reporting there are survivors inside the rubble of the World Trade Center. They know that specifically because those survivors are on their cell phones calling loved ones, calling 911, trying to get anybody they can to listen to them, give them directions as to where they are inside the rubble of the World Trade Center. So obviously the rescue efforts have a long way to go, and we're going to keep a very close eye on that as well. Mike Tracy.
Interesting contrast there. We see those still photographs in the newspaper, and of course they're incredibly dramatic, but when you see the actual video that we've seen, most of us have seen it live on television today, it is etched on our psyche and will be for many, many, many years to come.
Absolutely. It is good to hear tonight, though, that at least there are some survivors in the New York situation, and they do have cell phones with them, and hopefully they can direct emergency crews to come in and rescue them. We would love to be able to report that same situation at the Pentagon tonight. We are not getting that word at this point. Fox 5's Laura Evans is live at the Pentagon with more. Laura.
Rescue crews would love to say they can be able to go in and even see if there are survivors, Tracy, but at this point they cannot go into the wreckage right now because they're concerned that the building could collapse even further. There are still flames coming up, and Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld earlier today said the first priority is to put out the flames and make that building safe for the search and rescue teams to go in. It is a tent city down there. This is on the west side of the Pentagon that you're looking at right now, where the attack happened this morning. A triage center has been set up. There are thousands, one person estimated as many as 10,000 emergency personnel down there right now. This, again, as I said, is the west side. It is occupied by by the Army. I was told that the attack, that the plane that went into the Pentagon actually took out the firefighting equipment, where the part of the firefighting equipment which is kept in that area. So they needed to bring in so many extra resources to try to even tackle this fire. The fuselage, I am told, also is still under the debris at this point. Like I said, the full search and rescue has not begun because they're still working to put out the flames and to secure the building. And there are thousands of workers down there taking this one step at a time. Among the workers, the world-renowned Fairfax Urban Search and Rescue, among many of the other rescue teams. But a little bit about the Fairfax Urban Search and Rescue Team. There are more than 100 members on that team. Training is intense. They are appointed to that team. They were assembled in 1986 after the 1985 earthquake in Mexico City, where untrained workers were actually killed trying to rescue people in the Mexico City earthquake. So that is why they assembled. They train monthly, and then every year they have a full team drill preparing for situations like this. You may remember they were involved in the Oklahoma City bombing. They were involved in earthquakes in Turkey, in Armenia, in the USSR, and in the Philippines. They are on standby right now. They are prepared to stay all night long and for many days to come, possibly weeks, to try to get this situation resolved. But again, they cannot go in at this point. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks very much, Laura. I want to pass along to you and to our viewers that CNN is now reporting that up to 800 people are missing where you are, Laura, at the Pentagon after that hijacked jetliner crashed into the building today.
We were reporting that the Pentagon was asking the people who work in that area to call in, let us know you're all right. Apparently we have relatives who are calling in saying that perhaps their loved one is not all right and they haven't heard anything. Bob Barnard is out in that area too. Bob, give us the latest from your position.
Well, let me just clarify, Mike. Did you say 800? Is that what CNN is reporting?
Yeah, I'll read it to you. This is from the Associated Press. We have not confirmed this, but this is according to CNN. CNN is reporting up to 800 people are now missing after a hijacked jetliner crashed into the Pentagon. CNN quotes a Pentagon spokesperson as saying between 100 and 800 Pentagon staff members are missing and feared injured or dead.
Okay, well, Fox News was reporting earlier that the number was about 100. But officials here at the Pentagon didn't want to say anything about numbers, in fact, numbers of injuries or perhaps fatalities in the building behind me. They just say, as Laura is reporting, that the search and rescue teams haven't been able to get in. But you are seeing there now, these were pictures taken just before sunset. This is the Montgomery County Urban Search and Rescue Team from Maryland. Not as renowned as the Fairfax team, but they had a dog going in. They actually had 2 crews. You'll see the second one in a minute. They also had 8 all-terrain type vehicles. This was an unusual vehicle that we saw going in there, so they are getting ready to do battle inside. This was another dog, a shepherd, that was going in with another crew of urban search and rescue personnel from Montgomery County, getting ready, standing by, as Laura said, waiting for the building to be secure enough for them to go in. First thing, of course, is you look here to get the smoke and fire under control. But these people are here. They are ready to go in. They're eager to go in. And my goodness, if there are as many as 800 people missing inside this rubble right now, well, then perhaps there are some survivors among them. And obviously they want to get to them as quickly as possible. Those who've lost their lives here today, it's obviously too late for them. But as there appear to be in New York, could be survivors in that rubble. And the search and rescue teams you just saw going in, they went in about 4 or 5 hours ago. They are standing by and very eager to go in, but the authorities want to make sure it's done safely, Mike and Tracy.
Bob.
Clarification perhaps on that 100 to 800, a figure like that, when they talk about people being missing, they may be that they are not accounted for. They haven't heard from them, they haven't called in to say I'm okay, or I didn't come to work today, or I went to the beach, or whatever. So they'll be able to get all of that information.
We're going to go now to a live news conference where Rudy Giuliani is updating us from New York, and I can tell you they've upped the number of firefighters dead to 265. Let's listen.
Do we know why they were stopped?
Not yet.
Commissioner, can you tell us anything about the rescue of the 2 Port Authority officers or the ongoing effort with the people in the basement, where the Port Authority officers were pulled out of, or details?
We can't say yet. It was Trinity and Church where the officers were that were just pulled out. The other people that are still in the building, we can't tell exactly where they are.
We all know that the Port Authority is housed in the World Trade Center. Any idea of the status of their operations?
They've lost a lot of people, and we don't know the full dimension of that either. But the Port Authority have a lot of people that are missing, and we were fortunate to find 2 the police officers. We'll keep searching for the others, but they have sustained a lot of losses.
The group of people with the cell phones that Marcia referred to, how big a group that size is in that particular location?
I don't think we know the exact numbers. We know it's more than 2 people. It's two people communicated, and they say there were more people there.
And
the people who are roaming around the city trying to find information about those who are missing, what are they supposed to do? Where are they supposed to go? And who's collecting that information?
The phone number that they should call is 212-560-2730. And then, as we have information about people either who have been recovered or are dead, we'll let them know that.
Is our morgue able to handle this?
We had a meeting with the medical examiner earlier. Went over it with him. He believes that he's able to handle it. He'll start handling it at 30th Street, which is the morgue for Manhattan. He'll then be able to move up to the Bronx, where he also has facilities. And then we have the possibility of using the pier on the west side, which is set aside in case the numbers get too difficult to handle. But he thinks he can handle at least a good deal of it tomorrow and the next day, right in Manhattan.
Commissioner Bonnet, can you talk about the loss of the fire department?
We've got over 300 people that are missing that we can't account for. We believe that many of them are gone. We don't. We'll keep looking. We have hundreds of people over there now trying to find as many possible locations that they might be in some way in a void or whatever, and still be able to breathe and still alive. But we believe that most of these people, I think, are going to be unable to pull out. So we'll just keep working on it. I have a number I'd like to give. We haven't been able to make any contact with the families because we're still unsure of the situation. So the number for the families who haven't spoken to their loved one in the course of this whole horrible day, if they call this number, we'll at least tell them that that this is a person that's missing, or that we have had some contact with this person. The number would be 718-999-2541 is a number that we'll be using at Fire Department headquarters.
What about
It's just for firefighters.
What about Chief Dan?
Just for firefighters. Firefighters and fire officers, EMS personnel. I would we'll man those numbers. That number will roll over to 10 lines, and we'll be able to just try to give them some information. We don't have a lot, so that's why we haven't been calling them like we would normally do.
What about the top members of your staff who may have been lost?
Deborah Whit.
I'm sorry, Deb.
What about the top members of your staff who may be lost?
We've notified their families already. Spoke to them earlier.
How do you feel about that?
How do I feel about it? I don't know what to say. We lost people that have given over 40 years. Commissioner Feehan has had every job in the department. Probably the most valuable person in the department. When I got this job, the mayor and Commissioner Safer said, make sure you keep Bill Feehan. Haven't regretted that one day. He's given a whole life to this department. Chief Gansey, the same thing. Chief of Department, 33 years, 34 years. Ray Downey, we just honored him with a dinner. Almost 40 years of service. World renowned for situations like this. Telling me how dangerous it was when we first got there. All the possibilities, everything that he was trying to do to, get the people out. Father Judge, I don't know if you know Father Judge, one of the nicest men you could possibly find in the whole world. We haven't found other people yet either. I don't even want to mention their names. Some of the best people in this department. I can't find anybody from 5 rescues and 7 squads, and it's just it's a devastating thing. I don't know. Well, the fire department will recover, but I don't know how.
Commissioner Garrick, in the police department, do you have any idea how many people you're looking for at this time right now?
The number we're looking for is in excess of about 32, 33 people. That's what we know as of right now. And for the members, for the family members of the police department, if they have questions or they need to contact us regarding their family members, they can call 718-677-8238. It's the Special Operations Division, and we'll be able to help them as much as possible.
How close are rescue teams able to get to the scene, assuming there are people who are there?
The rescue teams are able to get very close now. It was very difficult during the day, but in most places they now can operate. There's still a few dangerous areas, but they're able to operate. They're able to operate down there now.
And are there pockets where people maybe?
Yes, we're very hopeful that there are pockets where there are people, not only the ones that we know about, but hopefully others. A group of firefighters were at St. Vincent's Hospital that were in a void for 4 or 5 hours, and we're hopeful that there are other situations like that. And that's why our rescue workers are working so furiously.
How big a group was that, Mayor?
That was a company. It was a group.
Company survived?
No, it was about 7.
Yeah, it's 5 guys in an office.
5 guys
6.
survived.
Six men.
This was earlier today. They were in I believe one World Trade Center, and the firefighter described to me that they were there for about 4 or 5 hours, and when they walked out, they were shocked to see that the building had come down, because they knew there had been damage, but they had been in a void, so they had been protected.
What unit are we talking about there?
I'm not sure.
We'll
find out for you.
I think I remember, but I don't know.
Can you just tell us again about the 2 Port Authority police officers, how they were found, their condition?
No, the only thing we know is that they were found a while ago, that they're alive, and we'll get you more information about their condition.
And since we're talking about the Port Authority, I guess it's a reasonable assumption there's a large number of Port Authority police officers missing as well.
I'm sure there are. We don't have those exact numbers, as well as Port Authority personnel, the people who work for the Port Authority.
Wasn't their office in?
Yeah, their office was there, and so we don't know how many people were actually at work. The first attack was at about 8:50, and then there was time to evacuate a lot of the building. So we're not sure at this point how much of the 2 buildings were evacuated in that period of time between the first attack by the airplane until the first building came down. We're hopeful, because we saw a lot of people leaving. We all did at the time we were down there. We're hopeful that a lot of people got out of the building, but we don't know the numbers yet.
Maybe Commissioner Carrick could tell us a little bit about the high-ranking members of the department. I understand one was missing for a while, and you were able to find him. And I believe the police surgeon was medevaced out to New Jersey. Did I get that right?
No, not to my knowledge. Police surgeons accounted for the ranks that we're looking at and looking for are at the ranks of police officer and detectives, and perhaps a few sergeants.
Last question, Deborah Farrer. Last one, Deborah Farrer.
Is there a coordinated effort right now to find out who exactly may have not been in the building when this happened, or people just calling various companies? How will we find out who was there and who was not there?
Yeah, we're trying very hard by communicating with the Port Authority and some of the major tenants. We're trying to recreate how many people are there, but actually the major effort is really focused on trying to rescue people. The people who are out, I'm sure, have largely communicated with their families and are doing that. I saw many people doing that on the telephone as we were leaving. So really the focus of our efforts is to try to get as many people out as possible, with the hope that there are still people that are alive, like the ones that we know about.
Mayor, you said earlier that there were several other buildings downtown that may be structurally unsafe that you were still not sure about and that, in fact, may collapse. Has anything changed from earlier today?
No, I don't think so. Not from the last time we had a briefing, and we were down there. And
5 World Trade Center, I heard, was in some kind of trouble. What's the status of 5 World Trade?
I don't know.
We're going to wait for daylight engineers to take a look at all these buildings.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're going to wait till the daylight tomorrow. We'll have building and structural engineers check all these buildings that we're concerned about to make sure they're safe for rescue workers and to see what we can do to salvage these buildings.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you can ask your last question. Go ahead.
How long?
Go ahead. He's been trying. He's been trying for a while.
In terms of how long does the department expect the people to be able to survive underneath the rubble like that? I mean, is there some sort of...
There's no... They could survive for some time. There's no way to know exactly how long, but it really it depends. And I think one of the things that comes out of today is it depends on... I guess it depends on the will of God, or as to where you are, where you're standing, as this firefighter pointed out to us earlier.
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify something, Commissioner.
You're listening to a press conference from New York from Mayor Giuliani, answering a lot of reporter questions about the number of firefighters missing. It's believed to be 300 or more. Several New York City police officers missing as well. And he was also talking about the good news that some people are calling on their cell phones to let family members or authorities know that they are in there somewhere in these pockets of air.
Representative of the fire department talking about the very good men, people that have been with the department 30 and 40 years who are missing in this. Interesting that in one of those pieces of video that we saw there, the New York skyline, which is darkened tonight. New York, which prides itself on being the city that never sleeps, tonight is a city that is in mourning over this incredibly horrible day.
Among those confirmed dead at the World Trade Center, according to the list that I have in front of me, is the Reverend Michael Judge, and you may have heard the representative from the fire department speak about him. He was the fire department's chaplain.
Let's go now to Brian Bolter, who has the latest information from our newsroom. Brian?
Yeah, Mike Tracy, it's human nature to look for what we can as far as a bright spot in any situation, and obviously you're hearing about some survivor stories there. We're also getting word that while those people, at least a few, are dialing 911 and dialing loved ones on their cell phones that are trapped in the rubble right now, obviously still alive, they are also reporting that they are surrounded by other people who don't have cell phones. So a lot of potential survivor stories in that situation as the New York's finest try and battle the elements and get in there and do what they can to save some lives. In the meantime, you heard Mayor Rudy Giuliani urge all New Yorkers to stay home tomorrow, one of the busiest cities in the entire world. And he's asking everybody, if possible, to stay home. One person who had a heck of an experience today is a reporter by the name of Brian Palmer. He's a citizen first, reporter second. Although, as you see the piece that he filed this afternoon, you can see that sometimes that gets switched, where you may be a reporter first and a citizen second. This is his account of what he saw today as the tragedy unfolded in New York.
At 8:48 in the morning, rush hour exploded in New York City. I watched the World Trade Center towers explode and burn as I sat on a stalled subway train on the Manhattan Bridge, along with dozens of disbelieving passengers, a sight so shocking it seemed unreal. I ran to within 1 block of the towers before getting stopped by emergency personnel. Billows of thick gray smoke poured from the buildings. Police officers would only allow people to move north, away from the explosions, even people with family members in the buildings. As we watched crowds stream north, a boom, the top of the South Tower toppling, then disintegrating into dust and debris and flames in seconds. That cloud of dust swept through the crowded streets, coating everything and everyone. More confusion, but surprisingly little panic followed as people continued to walk north, away from the blast. Then, about 20 minutes later, we watched the second tower explode and tumble, a surreal replay of the first collapse. New York City law enforcement officers were joined almost instantly by their counterparts from the surrounding area, plus state and federal officials, FBI, ATF, INS, U.S. Marshals, as well as the National Guard. These officers joined to keep order, but most New Yorkers kept their cool and cooperated. Thousands of New Yorkers have offered to help in rescue efforts, and many more rushed to local hospitals and blood donation centers to give blood. Their help will be needed in the days and weeks to come as New York and the nation recover from the worst terrorist attacks ever on U.S. soil. Brian Palmer, CNN, New York.
And we had mentioned the ripple effect that this has caused throughout the country, throughout the world. This is video of Indianapolis, Indiana, where gasoline prices are soaring out of fears that oil imports will be disrupted. In Indianapolis, some stations raised prices today to $3 and $4 a gallon. In parts of Ohio and Texas, there are reports that gas prices have reached $5 a gallon. I want to bring you one other disturbing result of all of this today. eBay has suspended auctions on its website, anything that has to do with items, either the World Trade Center or the Pentagon. It already bans artifacts from notorious crimes as a policy on eBay. But today, several items are popping up, including a grisly souvenir, a signed piece of paper from the World Trade Center. It popped up late this afternoon, and within an hour, eBay officials had already managed to take that offline. That's the latest here in the newsroom. Mike Tracy, back to you.
Thank you, Brian. We appreciate that.
We're going to go back now to Fox 5's Bob Barnard, who is standing by live at the Pentagon with the very latest on the situation there.
The latest is that the firefighting continues, Tracy and Mike here. Incredible. They just can't seem to get control of this this fire. Of course, there might be a lot of jet fuel still burning in there. There were 64 passengers on this Los Angeles-bound flight, American Airlines Flight 77, that left Dulles a little after 9 o'clock this morning and crashed into the Pentagon at about 9:45. You can still see there's an awful lot of smoke. The twisted building there, the face of the building, the west side of the Pentagon, the west of its 5 sides. And as you see atop the building there, that's the top of a fire truck ladder, and they are still putting water on this fire. And as Mike mentioned earlier tonight, that usually you don't put fire on burning jet fuel, so perhaps they believe that the jet fuel has burned itself out, but other parts of the building are still on fire, and until they get that under control, they can't go in there and try to recover any of the possible survivors. And it's encouraging to hear that people are calling on their cell phones in the World Trade Center buildings in New York, saying that they're alive and looking for help. We haven't heard any anecdotal evidence of that here, but it is quite possible. However, we do know that 64 passengers were on the plane that crashed, that was commandeered by a hijacker, perhaps armed with a knife, which was the case in one of the jets that slammed into one of the towers in New York. That perhaps those 64 people are gone, but that there may be some number of people inside the building who they have not accounted for and are still alive. We're hearing different numbers, Tracy and Mike. You've talked about as many as 800 people missing, but that may be people that the branches of the military are still hoping to hear from, who haven't called in to say, look, I'm okay, to help them narrow down a number of the missing and the feared dead inside the building. Fox News was reporting, according to law enforcement sources earlier tonight, that the number is going to be around 100. We just don't know. As you'll remember, the Murrah building in Oklahoma City, 168 people died. That was, I believe, a 10-story building. This is a 5-story building with a basement and a sub-basement. So there could be dozens of people who are in the building who are gone tonight. And as we showed you a little while ago, the search and rescue teams are ready to go in, but they need to put the fire out and then perhaps fortify some of the floors before sending in the search and rescue teams in the floors in that particular area. Although Laura Evans was reporting earlier that she spoke to people who said that some of the teams, the search and rescue teams, had made it in, as you're seeing a wider picture here, into some of the outer offices and have seen parts of the plane and some of the casualties inside this building tonight.
Bob, we're going to turn it over now to our colleague Laura Evans, who is also covering the Pentagon this evening, for an update on information that you have. Laura.
Tracy, I cannot hear what you and Mike are saying to me, but I will tell you what I've learned more about here. I'll give you a little update from here. A man by the name of Brian Schlepp, he just came up to me almost in a panicked state and handed this flag to me. He said he'd been to several Walmarts before he could find this. He was adamant about getting it on the top of the building there, because that's what was done at the Oklahoma City bombing. Of course, that's the least of the search and rescue people's worries right now. They are trying to secure that building before they can get into even search for survivors at this point. But there are thousands of rescue personnel down on the west side of the building right now. Thousands of people who have come in, volunteers, rescue workers, Fairfax County Search and Rescue Unit, along with Montgomery County Search and Rescue, and thousands of other personnel right there. They just brought in some more lights, so obviously will be using those lights, trying to get a better picture of the wreckage there, and they're trying again to secure that building before they can send any search and rescue workers inside. A few dozen of us reporters were taken in a couple of hours ago into the other side of the Pentagon where we were given a little bit of a briefing, but I just want to describe what we saw inside earlier tonight. The smell was outrageous. It was just a toxic smell of burning. You could smell the fuel. And we were directly on the other side of the Pentagon, but still down the corridors there was a slight haze. There was a horrible, horrible smell. And we listened to the Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld and General Hugh Shelton talk about their assessment of what happened today. They said that despite the tragedy, the government is still functioning and the Pentagon will be open for business tomorrow. They walked in with somber faces tonight, each calling it a tragic day for the country. General Shelton said it's barbaric terrorism carried out by fanatics. He says that, make no mistake, your armed forces will be ready for business. And of course, they will be ready for business tomorrow here at the Pentagon. Search and rescue crews are standing by, waiting to go in there as soon as that building is secure and as soon as the flames are in fact out. Tracy and Mike.
Thanks very much, Laura.
Thank you, Laura. One of the things that we had heard earlier today was that, in fact, when the rescue workers went in there, that was one thing they wanted to try and retrieve if they could, and that was that flag. And we understand that when they were able to, and they were able to retrieve the flag that flew over the Pentagon, there was a big cheer that went up from among all those folks. You can imagine, as horrific as their job had to be, that was a moment in which they sort of forgot themselves, and that was sort of a way of saying, we're not going to let you win in this situation.
Let's take a look at how this day began. Bright and early, 8:45 in the morning. No one could have predicted that the day would play out the way it has. 8:45, we learned that a passenger jet has crashed into the World Trade Center. By 9:03, a second plane full of passengers, crew members, pilots into the second tower, the south tower of the World Trade Center.
The FAA responded by 9:40, halting all flights at U.S. airports. At 9:43, we had our plane crash into the Pentagon, which you saw just a moment ago. Moving ahead in our timeline quickly, at 8:45, a plane crashes into the World Trade Center tower. We just saw that a moment ago, and now we're going back to the other part of the timeline there. We'll skip a few items there. At 10:10, a portion of the Pentagon collapses.
By 10:28, the World Trade Center's North Tower comes down. By 10:45, all federal offices in D.C. have been evacuated, and by 12:04, L.A. International Airport is evacuated.
This is a day in which we saw the District of Columbia declare a state of emergency by 1:27. At 5:20 this afternoon, Building 7 of the World Trade Center complex, 45-story building, collapsed without any warning at all.
By 6 o'clock in the evening, we were looking at sights and sounds from Afghanistan, explosions there. By 8:30, President George W. Bush was addressing the nation.
The images that we have seen this day are images that none of us could have ever imagined in our lifetimes that we would ever see. We've tried to put this together for you in a way for you to see some of what we have seen, to relive it as horrific as it is, and we want to share it with you at this moment on this incredible day in the history of America.
down on me.
There you go.